John Mackay.
Mr. Mackay, how do you do? How nice to meet you.
I do very well, thank you.
Good. Just been looking at your little pamphlet. Don't have time to read it. Anyway, thank you very much for doing this.
Pleasure.
You do a lot of talks to schools, do
Yes, we've been in a high school today. We're there 11s, 12s and 13s, so it's been good.
And
I mean, that's great grades.
Yeah. What sort of things do you tell them?
Well, today we dealt with some of what you'll see tonight, dealing with some of our fossils of giant kangaroos and things like that, and changes that can be observed between the fossils and the present-day world, and then challenge them to think about, if creation was true, how would you recognise it if you fell over it?
Right. So how old are those fossils?
Well, if I was speaking as an orthodox geologist, I'd say anywhere between 100,000 and 10 million, right, up to 40 million, right? So the age is a product of our theories about how we view the world.
It's not a product of facts, not a product of evidence.
No, because, in my own geological research, I'm convinced that what Charles Lyell did to us all was give us a set of glasses to see the world through. So when we believe that whatever carbon-14 or that is doing now, it's always done, we have a philosophy about how the present connects to the past.
It's not just carbon-14 though, is it? I mean, there are about a dozen different radioactive
It doesn't really matter, because what you've got is a philosophy. You have to assume that the present is the key to the past, because you weren't there and I wasn't there.
Well, that's true.
So whatever age you get, or I get,
nevertheless,
starts with faith.
But it's not just carbon-14, is it? I mean, there's potassium, argon, and they all give the same answer, don't they?
No, they don't. Carbon-14 wouldn't give you any more than 7,000 years, even if it worked.
They overlap.
Well, they're designed. I mean, we keep looking for new dating methods for the simple reason that the last one didn't give us the answers we wanted.
That's not true. How old do you think the world is?
Okay, I believe, just like you believe it might be billions, I believe we've got no more data than is sufficient for 6,000 or 7,000 years. And the starting position for both of those is faith. Whether you like it or not, because I wasn't there and you weren't there.
Well, you don't have to be there, do you? I mean, there are all sorts of things where we weren't there, but the detective work, the evidence.
Well, your chief starting point is either history or a faith position that whatever the world is doing now, it's always done. So Charles Lyell said Niagara Falls is going backwards at 1 foot a year, divided into the gorge distance. That gives you 35,000 years. Okay, you theologians have to bow the knee. So there's where it all starts. Whatever the present world is doing, it's always done.
If there were only one method of dating, then you might have a point. But since there are so many and they overlap, and you've got dendrochronology, you've got carbon-14, you've got potassium argon, you've got uranium, and they overlap.
Perhaps it tells you that they're all using the same assumption. That's what it really tells you.
Why are you so desperate? I mean, it sounds as though you're really on a losing wicket, because, I mean,
it sounds like science. You need the world to be old for evolution to be true, because you want to rule God out.
We've got geology, we've got physics, we've got astronomy, we've got biology. Scientists and all these different disciplines converge upon an age of the Earth which is about 4.5 billion years.
Now look, let's be honest. They converge on that because they're using Charles Lyell's assumption. The present is the key to the past. That's a faith starting position. And quote unquote from Charles Lyell, my aim is to free science from Moses, and he's done it. Except for people like me who are willing to get up and look silly sometimes.
Well, it's not really fair to say that we have a faith position and then we try to make everything fit. I mean, there are so many different pieces of scientific evidence, and they all fit together. We don't have a faith position. If the evidence really supported a 6,000-year-old Earth, we'd agree.
Well, look, what your biggest problem is, Richard, when you deal with scientific evidence, you first of all have to believe things like man is rational, the world is real, and for every real and rational question there's a real and rational answer. If you don't believe those things, you don't even do science.
Why do you apply this just to evolution? I mean, why don't you apply it to any other science? I mean, why don't you believe the world is flat?
For the simple reason I've travelled around it. Right? In other words, you can observe in the present, but here's the problem with this issue, and we need to be honest. We're trying to go backwards. We weren't there. Charles Lyell's book, 1831, Charles Darwin, 1859. If I take Darwin and say, if this is true, what would the evidence be 100 million years ago? Then I'm stepping from the present back into the past. I have faith. If I do that with the Bible, I've got to be honest. It's a faith starting position. Anybody who says it isn't is not telling you the truth.
Well, the difference between 6,000 years and 4.6 billion years, it's equivalent to believing, if you believe the world is 6,000 years, it's equivalent to believing the distance from New York to San Francisco is 7.8 yards. I mean, that's the scale of the disagreement.
Oh, beyond a shadow of a doubt. But the reality is I can measure the distance to New York from here exactly because it's in the present. The minute I step backwards, there's several things that I have to do. I have to assume, how is the present connected to the past? Charles Lyell deliberately set out to remove a biblical approach.
Lyell was a religious man. He had problems with
You're a
Darwin.
religious man. Be honest, Richard, you're an atheist, right?
That's not religion.
I'm afraid it is. That's your blind faith position for which you get nothing.
Nevertheless, Lyell was a Christian, and Lyell had problems with Darwin. Lyell was actually quite reluctant to believe Darwin.
Of course he did. But in the end, he's a disciple of his own disciple.
Well,
right? And in reality, anybody who sets out to remove Moses from anywhere has a problem with Jesus Christ, who said, if you don't believe Moses, you don't believe me. John chapter 5. So you can call him a Christian. I would call him a church man. The two things are different.
You would place what's written in the Bible ahead of the whole of science, is what you're saying.
Well, I don't think even Isaac Newton would have had a problem with that statement. Yes, because he did too. But what's happened between then and now is the change in the glasses we wear. And if I'm achieving anything in schools or colleges, I'm getting the kids to say, okay, let's be honest, how are we seeing the world and what questions are we asking as a result? If I'm going to be a scientist, I have to believe I'm real, the world is real, we can ask real and rational questions. They are Christian presuppositions, not Buddhist presuppositions, not Hindu presuppositions. We got them exclusively from a biblical worldview. Even the word geology is invented by the Bishop of Durham. So we've got a big system of Christian thinking which predates anything you're talking about, which actually gave us off.
I'm trying to work out whether you're for real, because I can't believe you're really sincere. I mean, I think you... I'm trying to work out where you're coming from. You can't seriously believe what you're saying you believe. So I'm wondering what your agenda is.
Okay, well, you may have trouble with seriously believe, but I've been doing it for 20 years, so obviously it must be a good act. Right?
Yeah, and I believe it's obviously a good act.
And in reality, you will find there are many young people who are now Christians as a result of what we decided, okay, the young people are having trouble with Christianity. What's their problem? It's creation versus evolution 9 times out of 10 in this present world.
I believe it. But what do you say when you meet somebody like a bishop? I mean, bishops don't go along with you, do they? I mean, they all accept evolution as God's way of doing things.
Well, I had a good debate against John Polkinghorne, and he actually lost that debate, and it's worth seeing, right?
Well,
it's available free on TV.
In what sense did he lose it?
Well, let's put it this way. Politely, we wiped the floor if you want to see the debate, because he was trying to argue the God of the Bible used evolution, and Charles Darwin would have been the first to disagree, because the God of the Bible says he made the world good, and evolution hasn't got such a concept. Everything's just natural.
Yes.
Death is part of the system.
Well, that's
the
true.
biblical God says there was no death until sin. So you can have a God, but it's your own imagination. Right, so you have to cut that line in two.
Yeah, what about thorns? Are you one of those who believes that thorns didn't come into the world until after Adam fell?
Yeah, I am, but you see, what you're really saying is that roses started out without thorns, but then my biology professor said that too.
Yeah.
Because we have to start from seaweed, which doesn't have thorns, and then up with roses, which does.
You're just playing with words now,
No, I'm not, because you have to explain where thorns come from too. But you take millions of years with the Prince and the Toad sort of story.
Yeah, what about thorns being found in the same fossil beds as dinosaurs? What do you make of that?
Well, you've got to remember that the word geology, as I said, was invented by the Bishop of Durham. Our original geologists were all catastrophists. They were basically creationists in their concept. What you and I have done is relook at the geological record through Charles Lyell's eyes.
I don't really care about the original geologists. What about modern geologists?
Right, the fact is, you have a story about the rocks and the past. When I go out on a dinosaur dig and I dig up a dinosaur, it doesn't come with a label that says, "Hi, I was here 200 million years ago. I found it in the hole today," and then I proceed to try and work out a story which I actually can't get back to check.
So you think dinosaurs coexisted with humans?
I've no problem with that at all.
Okay. And why don't we see